Having recently watched Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, I have indulged my obsession with the anime by watching reviews and analyses of the show. While I am in agreement with nearly everything I've already heard, I still feel that Demon Slayer's narrative is not getting the full credit it deserves. For all the praise it receives, I have been befuddled by the reckoning that it was just another shonen until episode 19, since I was fully hooked after episode 1 and proclaiming it beyond compare by the end of episode 5. As to why I am so sure of this perfection, I need to take a brief foray back in time to the 4th century BC and one of the 3 important morons of Western philosophy, Aristotle. Why go back to Aristotle for a 21st century Japanese animation? Because his text, the Poetics, is foundational for how Westerners approach narratives. It frames not only how Western writers craft a story, but also how Western audiences experience and understand stories. This foundation also affects how Westerners receive non-Western narratives and therefore frames how I, a Westerner, experience anime. While Aristotle's Poetics looks at multiple types of poetry and their means of imitation, he spends most of the text focusing on tragedy. Aristotle defines tragedy as an imitation of an action that is serious and complete and has sufficient size, presented by those who act and not by narrative, exciting pity and fear, bringing about the catharsis of such emotions. In this way, Aristotle distinguishes tragedy from both epic poetry and comedy. There are 6 elements which compose a tragedy and help the audience experience catharsis: plot, character, diction, thought, spectacle, and music. Now, music and spectacle are pretty straightforward elements. In fact, most of the reviews and analyses I've seen concerning Demon Slayer focus almost exclusively on spectacle, with a general hat tipping toward music. Since those elements have been covered well and thoroughly by others, I shan't touch upon them herein, although an in-depth analysis of some of the music from a musician or composer's perspective would be much appreciated. Continuing to work backwards through Aristotle's tragic elements are thought and diction. Here is where having fluency in Japanese would be most helpful, but here I am sorely lacking. For those of us depending upon subtitles, our experience of thought and diction is almost entirely affected by translation. I'm going to touch on some of the translations given in dialogue and in the internal monologue as I go into the particular episodes, but I'm not going to perform a proper analysis of them as, again, I am not fluent in Japanese. Next comes character. Along with discussions on spectacle, this is where other reviews have shown. A great deal of emphasis is placed upon character, and this is where the role of choice comes into play. And while I do believe that character is important, and I'm going to delve into it in just a moment, I agree with Aristotle and maintain that the soul of tragedy, or any other story, is plot rather than character. And it's the manner in which the characters help develop that plot that helps Demon Slayer achieve perfection. We are presented with the plot of Demon Slayer at the end of episode 1, and we get to see the tragic, bittersweet unfolding of that plot from episodes 1 through 5. Each episode that follows the 5th builds upon the foundation of the first 5, progressing the plot and raising the stakes with each new encounter. It is the plot which moves our feelings, and ideally our feelings are moved through reversals, that is peripete, and recognitions. Since I'm covering 5 episodes, I'm going to dive into the middle of the first episode and begin the analysis at the first moment of peripety. Tanjiro has come home to find his family mostly slain, and takes his sister Nezuko on his back down the mountain to find a doctor. However, the effort to save Nezuko only places Tanjiro in danger as he falls from the mountain path and discovers that she has been transformed into a demon. This reversal of fortune promptly leads into the first scene of recognition. While Nezuko is atop Tanjiro and trying to eat him, his words cause her to recognize him as her brother rather than as food. She begins to cry. Tanjiro is trying to talk his sister out of her demonic transformation and bring her back to herself. The reversal and recognition provided in the scene is the plot, what the actions of the story are directed towards. It is the desire to transform a demon into a human, or a return to humanity. I'm going to skip Tomioka's encounter with the siblings and save that for a future episode-specific analysis, except to note that he highlights Tanjiro's flaw, his inability to act swiftly and appropriately. So ends Episode 1, having introduced us to our two main characters and transformed the simple plot of Tanjiro dealing with the tragic event of his family's slaughter into an involved plot wherein it is revealed that Nezuko has become a demon and her redemption is dependent upon Tanjiro's admission into the Demon Slayer Corps. While the characters of Tanjiro and Nezuko had been introduced in Episode 1, it is in Episode 2 where they are more fully developed. Tanjiro's reliability, protectiveness, and responsibility that was shown in the first episode is repeated at the beginning of the second. In insisting to pay for the basket and the bamboo, Tanjiro is both contributing as a functioning adult within society, as well as continuing to act as protector of his younger sister. Nezuko, meanwhile, has seemed to enter a type of second childhood. She is no longer capable of speech, and she interacts in a simple manner with her surroundings. When the two encounter the deadly way station, we are introduced once more to Tanjiro's flaw, his inability to act due to compassion or kindness, as well as Nezuko's struggle to overcome the disordered desire of her new nature. Nezuko is capable of overcoming the desire to feast upon humans by heeding her previous character trait of caring for her family. Even though she is younger than Tanjiro, she takes on the role of protector and aids him in overcoming the attacking demon. However, Tanjiro is unable to overcome his own flaw of compassion, and he dithers about bludgeoning the demon to death until the sunrise takes the choice away from him. Here we are also introduced to Sakonji Urokodaki, a trainer of those seeking to enter the Demon Slayer Corps. He gives no indication of having concern for Nezuko's demonic nature, aside from using it to force Tanjiro to acknowledge his own weakness. Tanjiro's compassion limits his ability to act and can hinder the goal of transforming Nezuko into a human. Tanjiro must overcome his compassion in order to not only help prevent Nezuko from consuming humans, but also so that, should the worst occur, he will have the fortitude to slay both her and himself. The introduction of Urokodaki drives home the importance of a story's length and how that length pertains to pacing. Aristotle maintains that the space that permits a hero, according to probability or necessity and in regular order, to pass to good fortune from bad fortune, or from good fortune to bad fortune, gives a proper limit to size. Proper pacing shows the movement from one type of fortune to another, without burdening or undermining the plot. We see this at the end of the episode, where Tanjiro is given the opportunity to redeem himself by completing a task within an allotted time frame. Previously, his considerate nature prohibited him from acting, slaying the demon, in the required time, by sunrise. But as he encounters the traps on the mountain that prohibits his descent, he ceases to consider his every move, and instead resolves to act in the manner that will allow him to reach Urokodaki by sunrise. This leads into the beginning of Episode 3, wherein Tanjiro's training montage neither slows the pace of the plot nor acts in a manner unbelievable in terms of showing Tanjiro's physical and mental progress. Personally, I believe it to be one of the best training montages I've ever seen. It takes Tanjiro a total of 2 years, 1 year with Urokodaki, 6 months on his own, and 6 months with 2 additional instructors, to transform from a charcoal peasant into a proficient fighter. While Tanjiro learns sword skills, Nezuko falls into a deep, nay supernatural, sleep. Her sleep renders her both present and absent. Her slumber, while the thing that may aid in her rejuvenation, is also the means by which Tanjiro and Urokodaki reveal how much they care about her. Even though she is a demon, Urokodaki sends for a doctor to make sure she is still physically healthy. Tanjiro's fear for her drives him in his training. Once a year of training has passed, Urokodaki sets Tanjiro to the task of splitting a massive boulder. Tanjiro wonders, is a boulder something you slice? He has been presented with a Herculean task, one that will transition him away from a common sword fighter and into a heroic figure. He will be extreme in his sword skill, as it is in the nature of the hero or heroine to exhibit the extreme rather than the commonplace. However, in order to accomplish the heroic feat, he still needs aid, and this is granted through the figures of Sabito and Makomo. We initially do not know much about the two additional instructors, other than that Sabito is already at the level of a hero, as he has sliced through a boulder, and that both of them care deeply for Urokodaki. Urokodaki's role as a paternal figure, which began at least with his concern for Nezuko, is solidified by the relationship Makomo hints at to Tanjiro. Under the calm training of Makomo and the intense, action-focused training of Sabito, Tanjiro is finally able to split the boulder. Tanjiro's heroic accomplishments shifts us into episode 4, and the revelation that Urokodaki had set the task as an insurmountable one. That is, he never intended to send Tanjiro to the final selection, as too many had previously died. Urokodaki demonstrates the same compassion that had hindered Tanjiro initially. However, given that Tanjiro surmounted the insurmountable, Urokodaki lays aside his compassion and sends him off to the final selection. Tanjiro's parting words of farewell for Sabito and Makomo worries Urokodaki. How does he know the names of those dead children? If you, the viewer, had not already figured out their phantasmal existence, this passage manifests it and, due to their demise, establishes both as tragic figures. The thing is, we don't yet know how their stories became tragic. Tanjiro begins the final selection by slaying 2 demons. This grants him confidence and actualizes his conquering of compassion, his inability to act, which, through training, was previously only theoretical. This victory is only shortly celebrated as a rotten odor nearly overpowers him, and he peers at a monstrous blob of hands and 2 eyes with a mouth opening below them, eating a candidate. As will shortly be revealed, Tanjiro is beholding an unnamed demon with a personal grudge against Urokodaki, a grudge that has allowed him to survive approximately 47 years in the Wisteria prison and consume all of Urokodaki's disciples since the Edo period. This unnamed monster is also the source of both Makomo and Sabito's tragic fall. Both were the most skilled of Urokodaki's students, and both serve as parallels for the demon and for Tanjiro. The many-handed demon narrative not only establishes Makomo and Sabito as tragic heroes, but it also brings the elements of parapete and recognition back into play. The demon explains to Tanjiro that the mask which Urokodaki made for him, a mask meant for protection, actually served as a token of recognition for the demon's vengeance. He was able to single out those who bore the masks for consumption rather than being warded off. The demon further reveals how when he explained this to Makomo, she became so emotionally distraught that she was unable to remain composed and slay him, but was instead rended into pieces. We now understand Makomo's tragic flaw, becoming emotional in battle. Her failure to overcome this flaw led to her downfall. We then get to watch as Tanjiro repeats her mistake. It is not clear how much Tanjiro is able to pick up on Sabito and Makomo's discussion, but the intervention of Tanjiro's dead brother in order to wake him from his stupor is readily apparent. The previous interactions with Sabito and Makomo, along with Tanjiro's ability to receive mild support from his deceased family, solidifies his role as hero. The common man does not have the ability to engage with the dead. After awakening, either through his own realization or subconscious heeding of Sabito's warning, Tanjiro is able to get his emotions under control. The teachings of Makomo are fully realized in Tanjiro's ability to keep a clear head while engaging different fighting forms. Tanjiro has thus surpassed and redeemed his teacher Makomo. The episode ends with the revelation of Sabito's tragic fall. His confidence in being able to slice a boulder undermined his ability to react when his katana snapped on the demon's neck. Shocked at his weapon and his own failure, Sabito was incapable of avoiding the demon's attack and has his skull crushed. Sabito's tragic fall comes from his confidence in his sword skill, which is actually not sufficient for the task at hand. This sets up the parallel for the demon to emulate Sabito as Tanjiro had emulated Makomo. As confident as Sabito was in his blade's ability to slice through a boulder, the demon is confident in his neck's ability to snap a blade, a confidence which is unfounded. Sabito lost his head, and so too does the demon. The repetition of the death slice at the outset of episode 5 propels Demon Slayer from high quality into the sublime. The demon's calm awaiting of Tanjiro's slice to lead to failure leads instead to a moment of peripety for himself. This peripety is accompanied by a recognition from memory, wherein Tanjiro is transformed into Urokodaki at the moment of the demon's capture. This time, that sword swing leads to decapitation rather than capture. These moments of peripety and recognition then lead to the production of pity and fear, and tragedy is an imitation of actions producing these feelings, and good fortune and bad fortune come about as a result of such recognition and peripeties. It is easy enough to see how the feelings of fear or dread had been established. Back in episode 4, we are informed of the stench, then we see the bloated form of the demon. If watching him eat someone were not enough to cause unease, the gouges that he rends into his own flesh at the thought of Urokodaki, and how he relishes making Urokodaki's disciples suffer before their defeat, may be. He is utterly despicable and reprehensible, and we are appropriately satisfied when his head is deservedly cut off. But then, what of pity? How can one pity a monster? How can we be moved for pity for this creature? Recognizing Urokodaki within Tanjiro the moment his head is lopped off, the demon is himself filled with hatred and fear, and he bemoans the fact that the last thing he will see is the face of a demon slayer. In the manga, his thoughts are even more explicit than the anime, for he believes, "Now, he too will look upon me as something unclean. He will look at me with despising eyes." Yet, what he beholds are sorrowful eyes, eyes of compassion and pity. This, then, leads us into the demon's backstory. He was never a man, he was a child. A young boy who is fearful and wishes to hold his older brother's hand. As he lays dying, he returns to the desire to be protected by his older brother, a brother whom he slew, and after his transformation was complete, a brother whom he forgot until he lay dying. We don't know how or why this boy came to be infected, not any more than we know about how Tanjiro's family was selected for slaughter. But we are all too aware of how easily Nezuko and Tanjiro's story could have been the same as the boys. Nezuko nearly slew her older brother, and Tomioka, in episode 1, reflected on how all demons were doomed to slay those whom they loved. And then Tanjiro, the older brother, grasps the monster's hand and prays that he will not be turned into a demon in his next life. And behind the weeping child, a light shines forth in the darkness, and he is once more able to grasp the hand of the older brother, and, as a human child once more, journeys onward. We are now capable of feeling pity. We have moved through fear and pity, and as the boy journeys with his older brother, we experience a catharsis, a cleansing from these. What is the plot of Demon Slayer? The desire to have a demon transform into a human, or a return to humanity. The actions undergone by Tanjiro unfold this plot, and not only does Tanjiro succeed in restoring the lost humanity to one demon, but he is the very means by which the reversal of fortune, that is peripete, and recognition are enacted in order that the demon is transformed from a monster to a tragic hero. From the demon's perspective, Tanjiro represents a tragic fall and a tragic end, and yet for the child still dwelling within the demon, that tragic end becomes redemptive, and he is able to be once more with the one he loves at the last. As we, the audience, move through fear and pity and experience catharsis, the element of fear felt by the demon, combined by Tanjiro's pity for the demon, creates a cathartic moment wherein the demon is cleansed of the demonic and Demon Slayer transcends the tragic narrative. Episode 5 does not end there, but this outline does. I had to skip over many details in order to maintain a cohesive analysis of all 5 episodes, and it is my hope that I'll be able to go back to specific episodes and produce a more detailed analysis of the story as it unfolds. If you wish to see if my hopes are fulfilled, please subscribe. If you enjoyed this, please feel free to hit the like button and share it with a friend, and talk about it in real life, not only in the comments section. Various links are in the description box below. Thank you for watching.